Hello everyone, it's Chris here, and welcome to a book show. It's something which I thoroughly enjoy. I like actually speaking about the books. To be honest, I've never had the opportunity before, and so I like doing it. Um, so if you enjoy listening to me, if you want to read the books, I do leave links everywhere at the back as well as in the description. And you're of course welcome to contact me and tell me how you found the book, how it went for you. Today we want to speak about a book which I mention frequently in the other videos. There are certain books which are so important to me anyway that we keep on repeating them. One, of course, is Oath of Evil, The War on Protestantism. Yeah, I mention it in every single video because it's so important. It is actually important for you to read that book if you're interested in knowing what's happening in the world from a higher viewpoint and strategic, in other words, from a viewpoint of God versus Satan, or good versus evil. Because it's happening. I mean, whether you believe or don't believe doesn't matter. It's still happening. And it's one place you can't really be neutral. But what goes with that book is in the last 20, 30 years, uh, there came a new wave of terror towards the West. And with the West, I mean the traditional non-communist Christian Western-orientated countries, basically NATO as well as US of A, which I refer to in my books and in these talks as the second beast, because that's exactly what the US is. It's the second beast of the Bible, as described in the books of Daniel and Revelation. And it's very fascinating how this developed and how it came into being with the second beast. On the one hand, is totally supporting terrorism. This is jihadism, in other words, the jihadis. Muslim extremism, that's the word. I want to say again, there's a difference between a fundamentalist and extremist. All right, it's not the same thing. I've said this many times in many books, because it seems to me that a lot of people just don't know, even though we ought to know, like intelligence officers, mostly from the West. They just don't know. It shows you their lack of training and dedication, I suppose. Now, just to be clear, a man like me will believe that God has actually made the earth and everything on it and in it in 6 days and rested on the seventh day, the Sabbath day, which he also said you have to keep, and which I do keep actually as a Seventh-day Adventist. You can say to me that I'm a fundamentalist, and I will say yes, of course I am. I believe in the Bible alone and nothing else. Unlike the Catholic system, which is the first beast, who actually place their traditions above the Bible. Is that me saying it? No, it's they say that, not me. They say it. I can even show you. I can put some quotes of them in here for you if you don't believe me. Also, like always, when I say to you, we talk about jihadism or jihadis, Muslim extremism, very small minority, not everyone. Same if I talk about the Catholic system as the first beast, the little horn, the one who gets its power from Satan, from the dragon. I don't mean people in it. I mean the system. The system is what I have a problem with, because I look at it from a Protestant viewpoint. But anyway, being a fundamentalist, and also I give you the example many times of a guy walking there is wearing the Arab dress, the way he dresses, he's got his three wives there, a few yards behind him, by following behind him, he's about 20 children. Yeah, that guy is a fundamentalist. It's not to say he's a terrorist or he's going to be a terrorist or a radical. There's a huge difference. Something must change. And as I always say to you, what normally changes is either he gets compromised in the sense of he comes in under the influence of some teacher, some imam, or somebody who has influence on him to say that the West is evil and therefore they need to be destroyed. And by that they mean anything which is not Muslim, and specifically which is not of a branch of Muslim faith. In other words, if a guy is a Sunni, and basically every single terrorist attacking the West would be Sunni. They are not Shia, most of it. 99% of them are not Shia. They are all Muslims of a Sunni faith, which is Saudi, Pakistan, Qatar, countries like that. All of them great mates of the US, of a second beast. Ain't that interesting? I could never figure it out. I could never understand why. But if you read my books, you will find out how these people are actually changed, how they are radicalized. And it doesn't happen in 5 minutes. It's a process, or something dramatic had to happen. Mostly what happens is the US, and for that I include NATO, the so-called coalition forces of shame. And what they do is they kill the wrong people. They kill the innocents indiscriminately. There's no such thing as surgical strikes with them. I was actually thinking this morning of making a video on the non-fiction book called Intelligence Briefing. And I will do it in the future. It's a very, very hard book to summarize because it's almost 400 pages of facts, one following the other. So it's extremely hard for me to look at it and to say, wow, what are we going to highlight here? I don't know, because everything in that book is of importance. And that's what happens. They kill the wrong people. And then I also quite a statistics there in that book and other books as well, that because of the US involvement, especially in Sub-Saharan Africa, now that is the new ground. That is the new battlefield. Because wherever radicals get chased out of Pakistan and the Middle East and Southeast and wherever East, they all come to Sub-Saharan Africa. And as I said to you in other videos, the first wave which we started picking up in 2005, is really fantastic operators, but I'll get to them. Because they were just preparing. They were preparing for the second and third wave, which were the real radicals. And that's where you started seeing things getting worse and worse and worse in Africa. And because of the US meddling of shame, terrorism now has increased beyond belief. It is just multiple times more than what it used to be. I can give you the statistics. It's in many of my books, or you can do some research. As I always say to you, research what I tell you and research what I write. You will come to the same conclusions. I have no fear of telling you that because I know what you're going to find. But anyway, so let me also say to you, I'm not a Muslim scholar in any sense of the word. So don't see me as somebody who's trying to pretend to be. I'm not. I really know a lot about the Protestant faith, but that is many years of study. And in Codename Wednesday 7, and I actually do have this copy of it. Here it is. That's what it looks like. You will see here there's a woman's eyes here at the back. Now, pray to God that you never ever meet this woman and she's tracking you with a scope, because that is Lucy. This is Lucy's eyes. The sniper, the one we talk about in the books so many times. And Lucy, of course, exists. And the story is not exactly like in the books. We had to make some changes, but I can tell you she's a fantastic shot. And she also, she features a lot. I'm close to Lucy. I really like her. Rebecca likes her as well. And she's very unique, very unique woman. But anyway, so Codename Wednesday 7. Let me tell you what the book is about, and it's a long book. It's 534 pages. And I made some notes here, like always. Otherwise, I might not remember what to say to you. You have to remember, I wrote so many dozens of books that even I can't remember every word. I have to go through the book again before I talk to you. It's just human, man. But in this book is important because it explains how these Muslim radicals think. Now, why do you need to know that? Then if you're something like Barack Obama, who attended these madras schools in his youth, and obviously it left a mark on him. Which is not to say it's a problem. We don't have a problem if a Muslim or a Jew or a Protestant or a Catholic or whatever he is on the US Supreme Court. All of them are Catholics, by the way. How strange. How strange. Think that was by chance? Yeah, I got a bridge to sell you if you think that was by chance. Of course, it's not by chance. That's why you're going to see very radical type of laws coming into the US. But anyway, we'll report on that later as well. I'm thinking of expanding the show here once I'm done with the books. It will take many months and more than a year and a half for you to look at everything. We might even then start inviting intelligence agents or analysts and people like that, former ones, to tell us what they think is happening. Because, as I said, it is actually affecting you. Now, that is exactly the word. As long as the US Supreme Court judges and a man like Obama and Trump and whoever, the US president, anybody who's in a place of influence, should damn well keep his religious beliefs away from his job. You cannot have a judge sitting there who dislike you because he's Catholic and you are Protestant. You understand the problem here? Or the guy is Jewish and he doesn't like, for some reason, Arabs. And therefore he decides he's going to punish these Arabs a lot harder than he would punish a fellow Jew. Just using examples, what I'm trying to say is you have to be above these things. That is what comes down to separation of church and state. I hope you understand the principle, and it's almost a holy principle. Because once state and church or mosque start combining each other, you're going to have something like you had in the Middle Ages under the rule of Rome. Fascism, that's what it was. And you're going to have a church who serves the devil, who is going to then implement their will on the states because they will then control the state. So what would happen is exactly what happened during the Inquisitions. Is that priests will arrive there, and these priests will then conduct meetings there in the town hall of a local village, and then they would listen to all the impimpies. I don't like you, so I go to the priest and I say, Father. Now I'm rolling my eyes because the Bible says you shouldn't do that. I'm just saying what they would have done and did. Why? Because the records exist. If you want to go and find out how they did it, go and do some research or read my books. And so they would arrive at the village. I would go there and confess that this woman there is a hex or a witch or something. And why? Because I don't like her, because she didn't like my attentions. Next moment, she's called in. Oh, yeah, she's got a cat. Oh, yeah, she's a bit weird. Boom, there you go. Now we start torturing her until we get a confession. Now, this is the priest. This is actually the church doing the torturing, right? And please remember that the Inquisition office still exists. Yeah, it got a different name. It's still there. And it was your hero, he ain't my hero, John Paul II, that Pope, who I call the Antichrist, all of him. He actually said that the heretics, anybody who's a heretic should be killed. Yeah? Loving man, ain't he, huh? Really, really. But what's a heretic? Do you know what's a heretic? It comes from a French word. It's the old French word, which went into English. And a heretic is basically somebody who thinks for himself. In other words, it's a guy who does not automatically accept what the church is telling. So in other words, you'll have a guy like Martin Luther or Jan Hus and those people, all Protestants, in fact. That's what Protestantism means. You protest. Of course, most of you don't protest at all. You just accept what your pastor is telling you. And your pastor, if you go to church on a Sunday, is definitely bowing down to Rome. Why? Because Sunday is the mark of authority. It's the mark of a beast. There you go. Easy to explain. Just go to my episode where I talk of Oath of Evil. I explain it in great detail. It might be shocking to you, you know, but I'm saying these things as facts because they are facts according to the Bible and the Bible alone. By that I mean the King James, nothing else. In Afrikaans, perhaps the 1953 and 53 translations after that crap, burn it, throw it away, don't even read it. It's changed. It's changed. That's where the Jesuits are getting you. So when the church, after they got all the confessions and they've done whatever they could, and if you look at their torture instruments, it's very interesting because it's the same. Same which George Bush and those people started introducing with their war on terror. You know, this thing of fake drownings, you know, where you tie the person down and then they put a cloth over your face and they just pour water until you feel you cannot breathe anymore. It's really frightening. We underwent it during training, so we know waterboarding, that's what they call it. Yes, that comes from the Inquisition. Do you know that? Yeah, interesting, isn't it? Very, very fascinating. But, of course, George Bush and those people all belong to, what is it again? Skull and Bones, a secret order there at Yale University. So did his daddy, George H. Bush, the one when the president, the US president, who actually stood up in the UN and talked about the New World Order. Yeah, he did that. And the popes, the Antichrist, they often talk about the New World Order. Very fascinating. And now people like Vladimir Putin and others on that side of the fence are also talking of a New World Order. Well, the Bible explains that, you know. The Bible says they all sit on the same table, which means that they all in cahoots. They're all under control of somebody or something, which in my view, in my opinion, is wrong. That's it. That's it. But anyway, so once the church has done with the interrogations and they got the confessions, or not, doesn't matter. Then you know what they do? They hand over this person, this victim of this poor woman, they would hand over to the state who would then burn her alive on the stake. And then the church can sit back and they say, yeah, you know, it's so sad. It wasn't us. No, we didn't kill her. No, it was the state. Yeah. You think that will go up as a defense in front of God? Your father? The one which the Bible says you call your father? Not a damn priest who think he's above God. Yeah, they even say that. If a priest gives a confession, then God has to listen to him. Yeah. So if I have a sergeant in the police give an order, I expect a general commissioner of police, he actually has to listen to me. Yeah. It's so ridiculous, isn't it? It's blasphemous. It's total crap, man. So anyway, that's a method they would follow. Now, you will see in this book that there's no real difference between the Catholic system and the Muslim faith. Now, I know what I'm saying to you now is man, it's fantastic. But let me first tell you where this book comes from. It's book 42 in the series. And that means it comes after book 41, which is Codename Malise, of which I actually have a copy here. Now, Codename Malise is also a substantially long book. And Codename Malise, when I wrote book 41, I wrote Codename Malise because my late wife, Melissa, when she died, here she is, was 41 years old when she died. But after I wrote Malise, I was really sort of lost because I've written then 41 books in 41 months. And I felt burnt out. I felt drained emotionally. I felt, you know, I've been writing all these books. I've written all the codes. Now Malise is written. Before that, I wrote Codename GSSP 40, which is book 40, which was in honor of my mom, which is where we discuss the Hegelian dialectic. I will talk about that book too. It's very important. And then I realized, you know what, since I wrote the first book, codenamed VFO 565, which is not the first book in time it is right at the end actually. The first book in time, if you want to read the series, is codenamed Foxtrot, Book 6, and then Angel, and then you go on. Now, you don't have to read every single book to understand what's going on, but they do follow on each other. And since it is just one very long story, and it's a romantic love story too, uh, it will benefit you, you know, because I will refer back to books. Very much like I'm doing here when I talk to you, you refer to different books. Why? Because whatever is mentioned in this book might be dealt with completely in that book. And then I will give a short description. I won't say to you, you know, like some authors, I'll go and read a book. No, I'm not that arrogant. I don't really need your money. Frankly, I don't. Not at all. The money I get from the books is so little that it's like, for me, like, couldn't care less. But there are stories in it. There are truths in the books which I really want people to read. So you can say to me, then why don't give him out for free? Well, you know, the problem with that is that I found in life, if you get something for free, you don't care. You just gather them up. It lies on your Kindle or wherever. And I'm sure there are many fake copies of my books out there anyway. It is just one of those things. Well, it's not the latest copies. That's your problem in life. You can have probably very rough cuts. But it doesn't matter. People then don't read it. But mostly if you buy a book, you actually do want to read it. That's the reason. That's why I do it like that. But anyway, from the very first book, I was talking about the Muslim truths. And I spoke about that in other books as well, other of these lectures. Basically, what the Muslim truths comes down to, and it's denied. There's no way in the South African government's going to tell you that it actually is in existence. But if you look at the outlying factors and the evidence surrounding it, you have to wonder why South Africa was never the victim of a serious Muslim attack, jihadi attack, because it's not a Muslim country actually, not at all. It's I suppose a democracy up to a point, radical democracy, of course, because you have basically the parties, and the parties will then decide who's the president, and also majority rules, of course. But that's a way of life. I mean, you can't. There's no real better system. The US one's not better, and the Soviet one and the Russian one's not better either, because it depends on who's your leader. Of course, you can do with a good leader like Vladimir Putin in South Africa. Things will change dramatically if that happens, but it won't. It won't. You know, it's all party politics and crap like that. So they will never admit to this, but it comes down to the fact that there was a bit of Muslim terror going on in South Africa in the 1990s under Mr. Mandela. And then he banned a few organizations, the police got involved, and then suddenly he just stopped. Ping, pong, pop, poof, gone. Never again. And I talk about that in great detail in codename OSDM, which is a book you can really read. I haven't made a video yet as I speak here. I might by the time you look here or watch here. But that's where we look at counter-espionage, and we look at how Muslim terror actually disappeared in South Africa. And from an analytic viewpoint, that's a bit strange, because it's nominally a Christian country. It's not a Muslim country, as I said, even though it's very sympathetic to Palestine and to whatever actually the US believes in, they would veto. If you have negative votes in the UN, South Africa and Cuba and Venezuela, and those people are right on the top opposing the US, always opposing. But they're not opposing the US because it's a second beast. No, there's other reasons. It goes back historically. As Mr. Mandela said, your friends are not my friends and my friends are not your friends. End of story. Which is why the US is now starting to flex its muscles a little bit, yes, and trying to squeeze South Africa. And since South Africa brought that criminal charge at the International Court against Israel, which they actually won, with a genocide nation, Yeah, there's going to be consequences for that. There's definitely going to be color revolutions, things like that. Things are going to happen. You'll see. But the only thing which it will, when, well, it's a BRICS country. It's not never going to go back to NATO. And people have to start remembering that. So that will just push them further into BRICS. Why is that important? Simply because where it is. Where it is, it's mineral wealth, and of course, it controls the Cape of Good Hope sea route. Extremely important. I showed you a map, I'll show you again. So many times of BRICS nations, something which Western analysts just don't get, intelligence people. But the BRICS nations are carefully chosen. And then they straddle all these communication lines and trade routes. So people don't, up to about a year ago, they saw no threat in BRICS. They were like laughing about it. Yeah, they ain't laughing anymore. They should have read my books from the beginning. But basically, what happened is, and this is my theory, is that South Africa somehow approached the radicals and said to them, we're not your enemy. You're welcome here with us. You don't make any trouble here because we will kill you. And we can. We have special forces. We have a police special task force. And they're very, very good, actually. Especially in counterterrorism. They're exceedingly good. And they can get the job done, and they will. Now, I know a lot of you will now roll your eyes. I'm the one who went to Special Forces headquarters to record the Special Forces Museum for you. I know what I saw there, and I saw them in action as well. I know how good they are. And if you listen to the commander speaking, and we had several Special Forces commanders on Legacy Conversations, the main channel, and all of them told you that the standards are the same, and there's no difference. It's the same DNA, it's the same people. They just have a lot more experience besides counterinsurgency and sabotage raids. They are also now very capable of operating in undercover. Well, they always could. But they are very highly trained in counterterrorism operations. In fact, they have to do phase 2 of it. And like always, you know nothing of current special forces. Nothing. It's like with the Secret Service or whatever they call these days. You know nothing about them. You read a few things here and there, so don't make opinions based upon TikTok, as I always warn you to do. But anyway, that is my opinion, which I bring out in all the books, is that South Africa entered into some kind of a truce with these people. Not a single attack happened since then in South Africa. Yeah, there were a few incidents at mosques between people who disliked each other, but that was not a classic terrorism. Not at all. Touch wood, thank God, we're very happy about it. But it's a bit dik for the naalder, in Afrikaans. It's a bit too strange to be true. In other words, something else must have happened, and I believe it's a Muslim truce where they reached out. So we know for a fact also that 2005 London Tube train bombings was planned in South Africa. And so also was the attack in 2010 on the mall in Kenya, and a lot more. And then there's also a lot of money and other support going towards what many people will consider to be terrorists, ISIS, Al Qaeda, those people, all of them fighting against the US and the West. But then also the US and the West are supporting places like Saudi and Qatar and Pakistan, and they are the main terrorist countries, actually, especially Saudi. It's Saudi money which is paying for the mosques. It is Saudi money which is paying for the madrasas. And of course, 99% of the bombers of the Twin Towers were, what do I hear? Saudi. Yes, yes. And yet this George Bush allowed the Saudi royals to fly out of the US just after that bombing. Yeah, happened. Fascinating how all these things comes together. So on the one hand, you have the US as the second beast who's supporting terrorism, as they did in Syria. Now Al-Qaeda is in charge of Syria. Yeah, they were supporting them. As they were supporting terrorists everywhere, basically. So what are they doing? They are creating chaos. and they are also ensuring that Christians die. Yeah, because that was the logical outcome of this. You don't find the Christians anymore in the Middle East. They're gone. Most of them are gone now. They've been reduced 90%, 95% of what they used to be. Now, do you think that's on purpose? Well, if you take away the incompetence which I find in the US military and intelligence people, and with that I include NATO, of course, and you look at it from a higher level than strategic, and you accept actually what the Bible says is true, that this country is actually the second beast under the influence of Satan, then yeah, of course they would love to get Christians killed. Why not? They would enjoy it. Even if they can get themselves killed, Satan would laugh about that too, because every human being, whether you're Christian or Muslim or Jewish, doesn't matter. You're still a creation of God. He's made in His image. You are valuable to Him. He doesn't want you to die. You know, it's not an easy matter for Him. I quoted that to you from the Bible texts in other places too. Then He starts making sense. But I felt after I wrote Malise, I said to myself, you know what, I have to tell the story of the mosques. Because since 2005, we started to see mosques starting to get up and being built in Mozambique. And we wondered why. Because Mozambique is a Catholic country. It is not a Muslim country. There's no revival going on. Why are these people here? Why? And where the hell do they get the money to build these mosques? And if you go to South Africa, you see the most fantastic mosques in Johannesburg and other places. Yeah, fascinating. Very fascinating. Fascinating because you're going to find out in this book where if you look at the mosque, if you see how the thing is built, especially the modern ones, by which I mean the last 500 years, or let's say last 10 centuries, you will find out that it's built in different styles. And every single mosque, new mosque going up in Sub-Saharan Africa, including South Africa, is Saudi money. Saudi. In other words, they're following the Sunni religion, which means that they are terrorist supporters. Now, let's be careful here. Let me just qualify that. It's not to say that every guy who attends a mosque is now a terrorist supporter, right? I'm not saying that. What I'm saying to you is the Sunni faith is the one which Al-Qaeda and ISIS follows. And Saudi is the one who actually supports them, as well as Qatar with money, as well as Pakistan with training, and other countries. So that's what I'm saying to you. So when you see these mosques coming up, you have to wonder what's going on. Now, there's no problem with somebody building a mosque somewhere. We believe in freedom of religion. If you want to become a Sunni Muslim, then please go and do so. I don't care. And I'm the last one who will say to you it is wrong to build a mosque, or like happening in the UK now. All those churches are now empty. Why? I think it's by chance. No, that's not by chance. The churches are empty, and so Muslims come in and they just take them over and turn them into mosques. Yeah, that's happening. All the white people come in, and by that I mean Christian, and they come in and they change the old churches into business offices, things like that. It's disgraceful, actually. I actually saw churches in Swineland. I lived in Switzerland for a few years, and I was in Canton Vaud. In other words, that's a Protestant one. You wouldn't know it. You're there. I mean, a swine is a swine. I mean, they're just horrible people with a shitty little country, which I don't like. It's not pretty even. If you walk around in the forest and mountains, which I often had to, you will find a lot of cigarette butts there. You'll find a lot of rubbish lying around. And then, of course, you'll find the swine. Yeah, go and look at the video I made about Switzerland, the police state. You'll be shocked. But you'll be shocked even more to find out that there's literally no young Christians in that country. Whatever I've seen in these churches, Catholic as well as so-called Protestant, because they ain't. They follow blue laws. They bow down to Rome. They accept Rome's authority. They follow Sunday laws, Sunday worship, mark of a beast. I have to say it again. Yeah. So Germany too, by the way. Germany is even worse. Germany, you actually have to pay a tax. Oh yeah, Switzerland too, I remember now. If you declare you're a Protestant, they just take 10% of your salary. Boom. And they give it to the church. Yeah. Yeah. And if you're Catholic, how much do they take? What do I hear? 15%. Yeah, yeah. Take 15% of your salary as a tax. Yeah. Fascinating, huh? Fascinating. Do you think that is a separation of church and state? Huh? Do you think that? I speak to you as an attorney, as a former human rights attorney. I know these things. You think it's normal for the government to come and say, hey, you. Okay, you're a Jew. Right. We take 20% of your money. And we give it to the Jewish organizations. They can go and do with it what the hell they want. Yeah, yeah. You think that's normal? If you're a Swiss and a swine or a German, you would definitely think that's normal. That's how you grew up. But let me explain something to you. It's not normal. It's not normal. It's not even biblical. It's not even biblical because it's for you to go and use your tenth or whatever you have to go and use it for the greater good of God. And so now you hand this over to a priest or you hand it over to a dominie or your pastor or whatever, and he goes and buys himself a Mercedes. Yeah. Or if you're in the Catholic Church, you go and pay all these victims of your pedophile priest. Yeah. Mm. You know that during COVID, the Catholic Church actually got $3 billion, not million, billion, $3,000 million they got from the American taxpayer. Yeah, to assist him. Yeah. Interesting, during that time, they also closed all the churches down. Interesting, huh? Yeah. You know, you have to be able to look at these things from a greater viewpoint. You have to be able to link these things, and that's what I'm trying to do in my books. But anyway, in Switzerland, actually, the entire Europe, it's an atheist place now. There's no real Christians left. Whether they call themselves Catholics or Protestant doesn't matter. The average age is about 70 years old of people who go to church. So it's our generation and higher. Young people don't. And you have to wonder why. What's going on? But there is something going on because in the US now, the Catholic Church is something on a rebound. People are joining them in record numbers. And if you look at the political sphere, you're going to find out that the vice president is a Catholic, so is the secretary of state. What little Rubio? What did Trump call him in the old days? Marco Rubio was J.D. Vance. Before that, when Hilarious tried to run vice president, they didn't make it. Yeah, he was also Catholic. And Trump's first vice president, who also now disappeared, thank God. Yeah, he was also a very, very strict Catholic. Funny thing this, funny how a Protestant country now suddenly has this. Catholics as Supreme Court judges, Catholics or those under the influence of Catholics as presidents. It changed, didn't it? It's not the same country anymore, is it? It's not the same. Again, I say to you, it doesn't matter. As long as you don't follow Rome and you follow the laws of a country, it's not a problem. But of course, you don't. You don't. So anyway, in Mozambique, we were looking at these mosques, and we found out that the imams who arrived with their new mosques are actually the best operators I've ever seen. And why do I say that? I say that simply because they were very humble people. They still are. They would sit there under the tree playing with their beads in their traditional dress. They would speak very kindly and humbly. They would not be aggressive. They would not force it into your face like, the missionaries of the Christian faith would try and do. And we also look at the book between the difference between these two groups. I'm going to get to it. And they were clearly trying to build up a good rapport and fit into the community. And they were poor. They could fit in quite easily. Money was not important to these guys at all. It is totally different from the missionary. The missionary arrived, the Christian ones, from Europe or from from the US especially, and they have fire in their hearts, man. I have to say that, I have to admit that they have fire. They arrive and they have absolutely no sense of culture. So you have like this brash young woman, she's all about 25, 30 years old. Now she arrives where, in the first place, she's dressed inappropriately. Her bosom is hanging out for all to see. She is loud. She has no respect to her elders. She doesn't believe in waiting and ask about the cattle first. No, she has to just stop storming there. And then she arrives with a Land Cruiser with aircon. And she's got money. She's there not to spread the faith. She thinks she is, but she ain't. She's there so that she can go home and say, oh, look at me. I went to preach a faith in Africa. And where does she preach a faith in Africa? Oh, she goes to Kenya or one of these places. Perhaps you should preach your faith in your own country first. Just saying. Because you cause more damage than anything else. But anyway, so the two things which we could see what is happening in Mozambique and the rest of Sub-Saharan Africa is suddenly you had this invasion of mosques, and you had these imams who were very good operators, and we got to the conclusion that they're waiting for something. And then we realized they are actually not only waiting, they're preparing for the second wave. They're preparing for the second wave, as we called them, and that would be the leaders and the ones who have to hide in Africa. So they were ones who escaped from the Middle East or wherever, and then they come and hide in Africa. And some of them went a bit further and they started training camps, training schools, all those things. In other words, they were doing the madras thing again. Anyway, so they did that. Now, it's not to say that all of them are bad people. There's actually one in June of 2018. There was a Nigerian imam, which is like a Muslim priest. He saved actually 262 Christian men, women, and children from Boko Haram. They were attacked. Now, there are people who say they were actually not Boko Haram, but just Muslim herdsmen, where there was a tribal land thing going on in Plateau State in Nigeria. But the fact is, he took these people in and he hit them. So you find very good people amongst them as well. And I've got no doubt about their sincerity. I might have different religious beliefs, but these people are very sincere, which makes them, of course, very, very dangerous as well. Again, I want to say to you, I couldn't care less what your beliefs are. It's unimportant to me. And if you read Codename Swan 53, I actually go into the Muslim truths also in great detail and how it came into being. It's based upon the principle of Ubuntu, but I don't want to talk about that too much. Another thing which comes out in this book is also I felt I had to write something about a condition which is known as PNES. Now, PNES is actually it's almost like a stroke or a seizure. It's where somebody was absolutely abused sexually, and then it's quite common. And then what happens is they start having these seizures, which is not really physical in nature. It looks physical to you, but it's actually something which goes wrong in their brains. So it's psychological. And the effect of that is these people will just slump down. They become quiet and they become withdrawn. And you have to watch them very, very closely because Lucy suffers from it. And then she would just fall down and lie there totally out. Still there, but totally out. And you would struggle dreadfully to get a pulse. And if you don't know what's happening with her, you'll be really scared because it looks like she's dying. But during the time that Lucy or any one of these people are in that state, you can basically do whatever you want with her. You can rape her if you want to. You would probably not get away with it because they do have some recall. And of course, if you if you rape a woman who's unconscious, because if she's unconscious, she can't give you consent, which means, of course, that it's always rape. That's why I use that word. There's physical ways of knowing that. The doctors can actually spot that, the forensic doctors, in the way it happened. I don't want to get graphic. Point is, PNS is actually happening a lot. And I describe such an attack in this book happening to Lucy. And I also take it through how she collapses and how she's treated to get better again. It's so that about 90% of his PNS suffers also from post-traumatic stress disorder. So if you are one of these who suffer from that, and you suddenly collapse and you start collapsing, you really have to think about it. You might have PNS. I'm not a doctor. I'm not giving you any type of advice. And to be honest with you, most doctors will not have a damn clue what I'm talking about. They're simply not trained into that. So what you need to do is you just need to give him the information. I do have links in the book about PNS. But that's basically what happens. If in the books, of course, Lucy was captured by a warlord and held and brutally abused. In real life too, she was brutally abused. And then she escaped. And I'm glad to say that in codename Celery 50, I believe, is the book where we actually get hold of that warlord, and Lucy gets hold of him as well. But that book is actually about, would you believe there are drug labs in Africa, sub-Saharan Africa, who are actually making weapons of mass destruction. Yeah. And so in that book, I describe a combined operation with Mossad where we actually strike at one of these labs. And what exactly they found inside, I don't know, because we were on the outside and they actually went in and they came out with a few people who I haven't seen before. Very, very interesting book, fascinating book. It follows on code name Green 41. And Green 41 is actually where Lucy arrives for the first time in the books. But I knew Lucy, of course, long before I wrote the books. Very dear friend of mine. And funny thing about Green 41 is about 6 weeks after we published the book, suddenly there's newspaper articles coming out. Israeli intelligence raided a lab somewhere in Africa for mass weapons of mass destruction, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, you can go and research it. It's true. Go and research it. Of course, the book plays off in a different part of the world, but that is where Lucy actually gets hold of this bastard. And let me tell you, he did not die easily. It is fantastic. I really like that. But anyway, officially in the book, as I say to you always, that in the books, there's an official story which I'm telling you, and then there's a story in the background which I actually want you to know. And in this book, she's our heroine, and Rick Dawson, and Lucy, and Foxtrot, Gilslong, and all those people. They're after a cache of manpads, of SAMs, surface to air missiles. Because most of these things are now all over Africa with the war in Ukraine. I mean, Ukraine is the most corrupt country in Europe. Not me saying so. Go and read about what was said before the Western press has changed their attitudes. But it's so corrupt that most of the weapons supply doesn't even reach the front lines. And those that reach the front lines are useless anyways from the West. Oh, shame. Did I not warn you in American military might debunked? Yeah, I did. But people after it, that book was even taken to Congress. There were questions asked from their senators, people like that. They just laughed it off. Yeah, well, did your Abrams do again? It be got shot out. Yeah. Did I not warn you? Did I not say to you it will be shot out? you're going to say to me, oh, it's a Mickey Mouse version, it doesn't matter. No. Tell me about the ones you lost in Iraq, the 6 of them. Yeah, they were Mickey Mouse version too, right? Yeah. What about the F-16s? Patriots. Yeah. Did Israel not warn you about Patriot? Did Israel not say it in the 1990s that Patriots couldn't down a single Scott missile? Yeah, didn't. Yeah. And there's, of course, now hypersonic weapons, which Donald Trump says Russians and Chinese stole from the US. Yeah, sure, Donald, sure. That's why after 15 flipping years, you still don't have him in production. No, you still don't. Shame. You had all the plans, but you can't produce them. Why is that? Why is that, Donald? Tell me. Yeah, you're an idiot. You don't know what you're talking about, man. If you remember 2018, Donald, Mr. Putin actually stood up and he started talking about these new weapons of him. And it shocked the world. And then, of course, everybody was, oh, of course, but, it's perhaps in a lab somewhere. I can't produce these things. Yeah. Do you know that they produce more artillery shells in 3 months than the entire NATO? That includes the US of A, the second beast, can produce in an entire year. Yeah. So Russia's capacity for making war is, what, 4 times yours? Yeah. Yeah, no, it's fascinating. But anyway, they're after these SAMs and they want to destroy them. And so they're operating in this country. And while they are there, of course, they have Mossad people with them. Again, this refers back to codename GSSP-40, the book before, which is about the Gideon dialectic. Now, just to fill you in on the story, in GSSP-40, there's 3 spy masters, 4 of them actually, but 3 of them, all female, and they all existed, or still exist, I suppose. Now, 1 is dead, definitely dead, with the team. But there's a French one, which we call Lebenbaum. There's the Israeli one, which we call Mrs. Arik, not her real name, of course. And then there's Angelique Dawson herself. And all 3 of them is on the C-130. They're flying somewhere. Next moment, they are actually shot at by surface-to-air missiles. The C-130 is actually hit. And they had to parachute out in great haste to get out. And so it's an attempt on the lives of these spy masters. We're all working together against terrorism. And they find out later that this attack comes from the CIA, from in the form of a Jesuit priest, which is not something they're going to take lightly. We're definitely not going to take that lightly and just lying down. And then after that comes codename Malise, where they actually take revenge, where they go after this Jesuit and his mates. Very, very fascinating book, that too. I will speak about Malise at some stage. It's a very long book. It was a great book, great book. Then comes this one, where they actually now has found this cache and they want to destroy it or get hold of it. So we got a Mossad agent with them who we refer to as Rebecca C. In the books there's the triplets, Rebecca A, Rebecca B, and Rebecca C. And they do exist. Or they did. I don't know, probably still do. Been a few years. But that got nothing to do with my wife, Rebecca. I just want to say that. I was quite surprised when I met Rebecca and she said to me, oh, my name's Rebecca. And I'm like, oh, okay. I actually have characters in my books who's called Rebecca. And they're really great people. Then it came out, I actually wrote a book called Codename Honeybee. Yeah, and I might even have codename Honeybee here, so let me show it to you. There's Honeybee. Great book. Very great book. But it was written right in the beginning, actually. This is book 10. But it's a funny thing because Rebecca, my wife now, used to be known as Honeybee. And in her younger days, she was very much involved with rap music as a producer or something. Because she had a boyfriend who was involved in this right in the beginning. She knows all the rap artists. And her name there in that scene is Honeybee. And she was actually inside the cover of some kind of a LP of an album. where she was posing, and she was actually called Honeybee. Man, I wrote that book many years before I met her, so I don't know. Must be from God. But anyway, we have Rebecca C., who's the most dangerous of these Mossad triplets. And she's basically training to take over from Mrs. Arik, who's a very dangerous woman herself. I really love her Jews. Of course, my grandmother was Jewish. Rebecca, I don't have to explain. And I've got a lot of Jewish friends, Israelis as well. Fantastic people. It is sad what's happening to that country right now. I am critical as well on certain things, but between friends you have to be. But if you read any of my books, you will see that the Mossad people always come out very well. Even though, as I say, they're really not that good in Africa. They need us. We don't need them. They don't really fit in. They cannot speak the languages, and they are not liked. And especially these days, they are actively disliked. Especially because of their link to a second beast. People don't like that. You know, it is as Donald Trump said, yeah, well, you should know people by their friends. Yeah, okay, Donald, explain to me again, Saudi. You know, those people who crucify people, who flog gays to death. Yeah, you know them, yeah. Nice friends you have, second beast. Nice friends you have. Yeah, we know you. We know you. But anyway, this Rebecca C., like all her sisters, and they dangerous. They're all craftsman guy experts. They are all well trained, very well trained. They speak Arabic and they speak German as well for some reason. I'm not sure why. And they also speak, of course, English in a certain way. But she's there, and she is explaining because they also want to do something to a mosque. There's a radical mosque. Now, not all mosques are radical. Let's please understand that. Let's not be stupid like average American citizen who's got the reading ability of a standard 6 child of a grade 8. Not my words, I'll put the slide in for you. That's a problem in life. They are deliberately made stupid through their school system, what they eat, processed food, meat, things like that will all make you stupid. Coffee, yeah, it will bring down your brain power as well. So they quick to jump on the bandwagon, they're actually fantastic people, but they cannot differentiate between a Shia Muslim and a Sunni Muslim, a fundamentalist and a radical. They don't have the brain power to do that. Well, they've never been told. Let me be kind and say it like that. And so they just think, Muslim, bad. It's like I say in this one slide, which I'm sure I've shown to you now. Trump bad, Biden good, no F idea why. There you go. That's how you listen to your masters. It is like in our time, Germany arrives, the pastors. Apartheid good, rest of the world wrong. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We'll never make that mistake again, will we? Never, never. From now on, we query everything. We don't trust. So anyway, but she's there, and they visit the mosque because they want to plant a bug inside the mosque. They want to listen in on what's being said in the mosques. Because if you study counterterrorism, and I'm not giving anything away, it's in many of the books, and the terrorists themselves is fully aware of it. You have certain mosques where are certain radical imams are there, and they are the places where the actual attacks and things are sort of planned or actually discussed, or you can hear what's the trend of what they're preaching. You can quickly find out where they stand and where they don't stand. And so it's important for the intelligence agencies to be able to listen to me. Now, I'm very surprised that my friends in Israel actually allowed me to reveal this thing which I reveal in this book. But basically, they are using the entire structure of a mosque as one big microphone. I know that sounds very strange to you, but you have to read the book to understand what I just said to you. And for some reason, their system stopped working, and so Rebecca C., with the help of Angelique's people, they want to infiltrate this mosque and make sure that everything is there as it should be. And while they are at this mosque, they actually meet up with this imam, which is one of these radicals who came from the UK, actually exists, or he did until he met an accident. It's so sad. Yeah, roads are dangerous in Africa, man. What can I say? But anyways, one of those radicals, and he gets into an argument with Rebecca. She was biting him. She's asking him the hard questions. And she was actually doing that, and that is why the book will explain to you how these radicals think. How they can say that it's okay in the Islamic faith to go and torture people or kill babies or whatever they justify. Now, you find people like that everywhere. I just refer to the South African dominees who were saying that apartheid was good and biblical. You can go further back and you talk to the priests and the pastors and reverends of the day during the American Civil War, who would have told you that slavery is from the Bible. It's the way it is, man. Then I'll go back and I think I'll talk to Jacob and his brother and half brother anyway, and who had to flee with his slave mother, and they would also become a great nation. And then, but they would always be the slaves of the true faith and blah, blah, blah. You get these things, they take these things and they justify which cannot be justified. If you read Codename 1 Alpha or listen to my lecture at least, you will find out about human trafficking, which is slavery, used to be known as white slavery. And you will find out hard facts there, how it's linked to terrorism. Yeah, fascinating. And you'll also find out that the countries involved with human trafficking, under the top 10, not a single one, not even one country is in the Middle East. Yeah, yeah, yeah. What do you know? Yeah. You know where it's mostly happening? Yeah, most Christians were in Western Europe. Yeah, that's where it's happening. Yeah. Mostly. US, of course. Thailand, here where I live. Yes. China. Yes. Fascinating how this works. But go and read that, and she gets into this argument with this guy, and wrote it like that, and it did happen actually, exactly so that he can actually explain. He explains exactly how it works. Now, if I go back to Barack Obama, every single bloody domestic terrorist incident which happened in the US under his command was never called a terrorist incident, and there were a great many. No, it was called workplace violence. Remember those words? No, this guy comes and he shoots about 20 people dead. And he shouts, God is great, and he plants, pipe bombs and all these type of things, and he leaves a manifesto which I suppressed, where he swears allegiance to Al Qaeda. No, workplace violence, man, workplace violence. Don't you know? No, of course. But you know who's the actual people who's causing the trouble here? Yeah, it's your white Christians, man. It's you people. Yeah. Yeah, your hillbillies, man. You shouldn't have weapons. No. If you don't know what is terrorism, and you cannot even say the word terrorism, if you don't have that capacity in your brain, for whatever reason, to say that this is jihadism, this is a Muslim extremism, do you think you'll be able to combat it? Seriously, do you think you'll be able to do something about it? No. That's why you should read Terrorist Takedown, the book I wrote about my own name. There we actually look at how the US responds to terrorism. Then you find out, like, there was a nightclub in Orlando where some Muslim terrorist, nothing else you can call him, goes into this gay nightclub, starts killing people, executing people. Police arrive, they wait something like, how long? 8 hours? 8 hours, yeah, 8 hours wait outside. So this guy can carry on killing people. Yeah. And then after he killed himself, they going. Then there was the one at Las Vegas. Guy starts shooting there at a concert from one of the hotel rooms. And the policeman outside just froze, wouldn't stop it. No. And they get away with it. Huh? Probably got medals. Huh? Man, I can tell you in my time in the South African police, and even today, I would hope, we find an incident like that, I assure you, we would go in. Yeah, we would go in. Even if we die, we will go in. Actually happened in Johannesburg. A couple of policemen after my time, they went in. They got ambushed by the criminals and things inside, and they were shot dead. But you know what? They went in. They didn't stand outside and waiting, counting their damn toes because they're so shit scared they don't want to go. No. Wow. Don't be angry when I speak of contempt. These people are worthy of contempt. But anyway, that was the problem. If you don't want to deal with it, you won't deal with it. Now, inside the book, I also describe to you where the Muslim faith actually comes from. So we take a hard look at this Prophet Muhammad. And again, I want to say to you, I don't hate Muslims. My first late wife was actually a Muslim woman. Melissa was Catholic, and Rebecca, you know what she is. So I don't differentiate. I don't care. I look at your heart. And nothing I say here is meant to cause hatred. I just want to say that. But we do look at where this Muslim faith actually comes from, because it's not new. In the sense that in those days, in the 8th century, when it started, you basically had a couple of faiths around that part of the world. You had the Jewish one, you had the Christians who accept Jesus, and therefore they cannot be Jews, even though they kept the Sabbath. But remember, the Sabbath comes out of Genesis. It had nothing to do with the Jewish Sabbath. Nothing. Jewish Sabbath came 600 years after Genesis. This goes back to Genesis 2, where God created the earth and everything on it in 6 days. And on the 7th day, what happened? He rested. What does the 4th commandment say? Remember my Sabbath day. Keep it holy. Remember. You think God actually knew at some stage you're going to listen to some Pope, the Antichrist himself, who decided to move his day from the Sabbath day, from Friday night to Saturday night, going to move it over to the Lord's Day on Sunday, the day of the sun god. You think God knew that's going to happen? Yeah. Often wonder why that commandment says that. But go and read over evil. Listen to my talk there. You'll find something out. Let's see how these two religions are actually intermixed. Because it is said that Muhammad's first wife, Khadija, she was much older than him to begin with. She was very wealthy. And it is said that she was actually a Roman Catholic nun in her younger days. Or she grew up in that environment. And so the entire family was actually Catholic. Because remember, at that stage, the Muslim faith did not exist. It wasn't there. Muhammad would create it. Of course, the Muslim is listening here would tell me, no, of course not. God created it and only used Muhammad as a messenger of God. Yes, that's your faith. I respect your view. It's not mine. So let's look at it. In the first place, both of these faiths, talking about the Catholic system and the Muslim system, they both believe in pilgrimages. Yeah, struggle to say that word. One wants to go to Mecca, the other wants to go to the Vatican. And this is not the same as a Christian who wants to go to the Holy Land, because you can go to the Holy Lands and you can go and walk around them. Many of the places are actually not in Israel, it's in Palestine, or used to be. I don't know. Israel might have annexed Palestine by now. I don't know. But it's not required in the Bible, it's not required by God. If you go there, it is because you want to see, you want to feel something there, but it's not to say that you're going to be saved now because you went to the Holy Lands. It's a different thing with the Mecca. It's almost like an instruction. You actually have to go to the Mecca once in your lifetime, or more if you can afford it. So they both believe in that type of thing. Then you find the half moon and star, which is a Muslim symbol, which you also find in virtually every single Roman Catholic Church cathedral. But actually, it's not a church or a cathedral. It's actually a temple because we have altars inside of them. And then these altars are also not built according to what stands in the Bible. They have a different design, which will annoy God. Fascinating, that one. Then both religions also have this all-seeing eye, which you also find above a US dollar. And that is a representation of a sun god. Isn't that funny? And you find it in Egypt, in India, you find it across the world, also with all of them denoting some kind of a deity. And the one in Egypt represents Osiris. Now, it's not me saying this. This is from Carl H. Cloudy, Introduction to Freemasonry. There you go. Freemasonry. I've been telling you so many times, Freemasonry is not what you think it is. Freemasonry is actually a front organization for the Jesuit order of a Catholic Church. That is how they control you. Look at the way the buildings is built, or do yourself a favor. Go and search for Walter Wythe, Professor Walter Wythe, and go and listen to what he has to say about Freemasonry. Go and listen to his entire series. It will take you months to do so because there's 56 videos in it, about 2 hours each of total onslaught. It will change your mind. It will totally open your eyes. Well, I hope so. Then we also know that this half moon and star, as well as the other Roman Catholic symbols, can be traced back to Baal. Yeah, the same Baal which you read about in the Old Testament. And it's very interesting because Baal, or the way you spell it, Baal, it translates to master, husband, owner, and lord. Very fascinating. Then look at the way which Catholic nuns are dressed, and then go and look at the way which is expected from a Muslim woman. Yeah, same. And then both religions pray with beads and rosaries, same thing. Both have John the Baptist body parts. Can you believe it? His head is apparently inside a mosque in Damascus in Syria. His arm or hand, we don't really know, is in a church right next to this mosque, also in Damascus. Yeah. It's funny, this fascination with the dead. Let's pray to Mary. Yeah, but Mary is dead, man. She was a great woman, and she will be very highly rated in heaven, and she will always be honored, but she's not God, and she's not Jesus. And she cannot tell Jesus actually to be merciful upon you. She doesn't have that power. But yet, if you read the Catholic system, that's exactly what they say. She's the co-redemptrix or something, we call it like that. She is in the place of Jesus. That's why they write Jesus out of the books, and they put Mary in it. I can go on about Mary for a long time, like Maryland in the US. We have a first Jesuit priest in the US, guy called White. And guess what the White House is called after? Yeah, him. Strange, isn't it? Strange. Okay, when both of these churches, or mosque and church, have only male priests, there's no woman allowed to be a teacher there. Even though in advanced countries like Sweden you might find one, but it's not normal to them. Okay, then both of them also pray to the dead and the departed. I don't want to go into details now. I can if you want to. Both believe in purgatory, which is nonsense. Go and hear what I have to say in Oath of Evil. Both deny that Jesus is the Son of God. In the Catholic system, Jesus is replaced by Mary or the Pope. And in Islam, Jesus is seen as a prophet, yes, but he's not the Son of God. And so, as far as I'm concerned, then there's no need for atonement. There's no need for it, because the one through which you get to God, into heaven, Jesus, according to them, doesn't exist, not important, or being replaced. So both religions also say that earthly marriages will continue in heaven. Yeah, that's not what Jesus said, not at all. There will be no marriages in heaven. End of story. Both religions see a heaven that is one of laziness, where you lie around idling, keeping yourself busy with young men and maidens, It's absolutely not. So in a Protestant faith, you'll be busy. Both think that good deeds, even a single one of them for Islam, will open the gates of heaven. Yeah, now you're there. In other words, it works. So if you go to Mecca, if you do whatever else you want, now you're okay. You will get there. Same with the Catholic system. You have to see your go to mass. You have to do good works, and that will help you. And blah. No, it won't. It's faith. It's faith and grace, which will get you into heaven. Of course, once you change and you become a son or daughter of God, of course, you will be able to. You will want to do good, but that is a consequence of it. It's not that you're doing good and now you think you're saved. You're not. You're really not. And then both of them really hate Jews on principle, and you can see it in their deeds, and you can see it in their words as well. And for a long time, of course, the Catholic Church were hunting Jews. There are many, many cases where Jews got hunted down in Europe. These pogroms were not only in Eastern Germany, East Europe, they took place in Western Europe as well for a very long time. And you will say to me that just the other day was late Antichrist Francis, where he actually sort of apologized for the Catholic Church always saying that Jews murdered Jesus. Well, if you go and look at my latest book, Codename Snake 606, I discuss that. And I look at it from a legal viewpoint, and I'm very sarcastic because that was not an apology. And it was definitely not a withdrawal, because Rome doesn't change. So they might play with words, and you might think they're not the same beast anymore. Yeah, well, they don't change. So they don't like Jews. No, that is shocking. And then lastly, both of them murder and kill those that choose to leave a religion. And so we're virtually the same. They're virtually the same religion. So what happens is that the Catholic system was there first. Obviously, Muhammad knew it, and then something happened to Muhammad, and he took a bastard-sized format of the Catholic faith, and it became the Muslim faith. It's very similar up to a point. You will recognize many of the characters or deities or whatever inside the Muslim faith. You'll also find in the Christian faith, whether it's Catholic or whether it's Protestant. But there are very, very major differences. And let's look at those dangerous those differences, because they are actually very, very dangerous. So I want to get to this place where we start talking about it. Where was this thing between Rebecca C. and this Iman from the UK who died? He starts telling the story to the locals. We were standing there and he was telling the story of Muhammad to the locals. And basically he said something like Muhammad was 40 years old when Allah spoke to him first. He was not a child, he was a man of wisdom and wealth, because his wife had money, not him. He was a respected man, family man. He was married for 15 years at that stage. So he was a man who was appreciated. Now that is typical how we do it. They try to find this connection with the Africans. They try to say, this is a guy you can respect, it's an elder, it's a whim. And he then happens. It refers back to a youngster arriving from the US, firing her eyes or his eyes, and he wants to talk to the elders like they're on equal level, which they ain't. And they're just causing more trouble than anything else. I wish people would stop there reaching out and this type of shite which you find in Africa, or you see these people, they have this 4x4, so they're going on a tour now. It's all about themselves and their 4x4s. And then they're going to hand out books and things here to the tribes they find. Yeah, we're going to do that. But, we're not going to give him any sweets. Not for the children. That will screw up their teeth, man. We can't do that. No. That little pecanine there would actually like to have a toffee or something, would like to have a sweetie or something which he's not used to. It won't damage his teeth. But it's all about themselves. That's what it is. So they're very smart. I mean, this Iman then invokes this story of Muhammad, grey-haired, he's a man who can be respected. He's not a child. And Yeah. So he goes on and he says, Muhammad was at first overwhelmed by what was revealed by the Archangel Gabriel. Now remember the Archangel Gabriel, going to talk about it. When he quote out of Sahih Muslim Book 1, Hadith 301. And basically what happens with a Muslim faith is this is how it comes into being. There came to him the angel, this is now Gabriel, and said, recite, to which he replied, I'm not lettered. He took hold of me and pressed me till I was hard pressed. Thereafter he let me off and said, recite, and I said, I'm not lettered. In other words, what Muhammad is saying, man, I can't write. Even if you want me to write, I can't write. I don't know how. And then again he took hold of me. This is now carrying on, and for the second time, and he said again, recite. And he did that 3 times until I was hard pressed. And then he let me go and he said, recite in the name of the Lord who created man from a clot of blood. Recite. So as he was saying to him, you have to talk about this, you have to remember it, go to somebody who can actually write. And so that is how it started. Now this is very, very interesting because Muhammad was very scared of this incident which happened. He actually went to Khadija and he says, wrap me up. And so they wrapped him till he was, till fear has left him. And he said to Khadija, oh Khadija, what has happened to me? And informed her what was happening. And he said, I fear for myself. Yeah, that would be damn scary. I mean, if you're somewhere and suddenly an angel of God arrives and grab you and start pressing you to do things. Yeah. And there's another book which I also quote the same episode, Bukhari, Book 1, Volume 1, Hadith 3. And they said the angel came to him and asked him to read. And the prophet replied, I don't know how to read or to write. And so the angel caught me forcefully and pressed me so hard that I could bear it no more. Anyway, that's how it started. So he had these, I suppose you can call it visions. And he was very scared about it. Now let's look at this angel, this Archangel Gabriel. Because the Archangel Gabriel is not unknown in the Bible. And I'm quoting to you now out of the KJV, King James Version. Any other Bible is crap. Just throw it away, get rid of it. You read, if you want to read the Bible in English, you read the King James, the original, yes, or the Old English, not difficult. That's what you read. That's the original Bible. That's the closest to the truth. You read anything else, go and read Oath of Evil as well. I have spent many, many pages there showing to you how the Bible was changed. And funny enough, what they always change is they write Jesus out. Yeah, funny thing that. So anyway, this Archangel Gabriel is not unknown. He's known in Judaism, he's known in Christianity, he's known in Islam. And he certainly appeared to Daniel, Zechariah, as well as Mary. And as I say in the book, also Muhammad would have known these local religions upon which Islam is based, because Islam came afterwards. And for those interested, I just quote Daniel 8:16, King James. He says, and I heard a man's voice between the banks of Ulai, which called and said, Gabriel, make this man understand the vision. That is the vision where they saw the different kingdoms which is going to come in the form of a man, the head, the silver, the gold, the bronze, the feet of clay. Read Oath of Evil or listen to Professor Walter White, where he explains these things to you in great detail. And you need to know that. You need to know what you're looking at there is prophecies. And then also in Daniel 9, verse 21, it says, yeah, whilst I was speaking in prayer, even the man Gabriel, whom I had seen at the vision in the beginning, being caused to fly swiftly, touched me about the time of the evening oblation. We also talk about the same angel in Luke 1, verse 11, and there appeared unto him an angel of the Lord, standing on the right side of the altar of incense. And then just a little bit later in verse 19, and the angel answering said unto him, I'm Gabriel, that stand in the presence of God, and I am sent to speak up unto thee, and to show thee these glad tidings. And what the glad tidings here was, it was about John the Baptist, which of course had to come so that he could then baptize Jesus. That's basically what it's about. And then it goes on, Luke 1:26 to 29. I don't want to read all of it to you because it might be boring to you. But basically, this is where in the 6th month, the angel Gabriel was sent from God unto the city of Galilee, namely Nazareth. So now he's speaking to Mary. And later, of course, everything has worked out, that he told Mary that she's going to give birth to Jesus. And also that he was also talking to Joseph, that he doesn't send her away. Now, what do you see here? What is the difference? That's why I was quoting it to you. But the difference here is that this Gabriel, which meets Muhammad, the prophet, and starts fighting with him and forcing him to read and write, which he can't do, is very unreasonable. He's a very violent angel, actually. He's the one who is actually putting the fear of God into Muhammad. While the Gabriel of the Bible is a very kind, passionate fellow angel who arrives as good tidings. He's not violent. He's not trying to force anybody. He's giving good messages. He's uplifting. He's comforting. He's totally different from the one which created um, the Muslim faith. So this is a typical example of how we would actually look at this. How we would say, okay, this is what's in the Quran and this is what's in the Holy Bible. And so it's very fascinating to listen to that conversation because it goes further. Because he would then, Rebecca C. would then ask him, okay, how do you get that you can torture a woman? How you can get to that? How do you get to that? And of course, he's not stupid. He wakes up immediately to what's happening. In fact, he recognizes her. And he definitely recognizes Angelique as well, which is probably why he died. But anyway, didn't die in the book. The real one died later. Or so they say. What do I know? There's another problem here which the Muslims have in Africa, and that is that the Middle Eastern Muslims don't really consider African Muslims to be Muslims, which is weird. I didn't know that, but I was told that in a briefing, and I have reason to believe it's true, so I'm telling you. And you may ask me why. Why are the local Muslims not Muslims? It has to do with the tribal chiefs. Again, it has to do with who they are loyal to. So the answer came from a guy who was doing the briefing. He said the rest of the Muslim world does not see them as true children of Islam. They are more into African culture than pure Islam. They stay true to the African traditions more so than it is said at Mecca or whatever. In fact, it comes down that they are actually not radical enough. In general, the African Muslims tend to be quite peaceful. They're not really about to take up arms unless attacked. Because you have a right to defend yourself according to Islam. You can defend yourself, and why not? You should. So now it starts making sense to you. If you want to create a jihadi type of rebellion or get them to fight and cause chaos and kill Christians, attack them. Yeah, attack them. Go out and attack them. Do that. See what happens. Let's talk about the 2012 Olympic Games. I spoke about them briefly in other books and talks. Well, this one last year in 2024, when was it? The Olympic Games in France, in Paris. And any other. You can also look at the Commonwealth Games. There's so many of them. Just go and research a bit. There's a website or a YouTube channel called LED Ministries. I'll leave a link for you here. Go and listen. Those guys make all these videos where they actually investigate, where they can see the occult in a pop star, or they see the occult in songs, or they see the occult in these games and things, the opening ceremonies. And if you look at that, you will find absolute hateful, blasphemous things being done and said, open Satan worship, You'll find it absolutely in those opening ceremonies. You cannot argue with it. It's there. Yeah, they will even go as far with I think it was in Sydney with in Australia with the Commonwealth Games where they actually have a woman riding a beast dressed in red. Yeah, what does that tell you? Yeah. If you're actually following these things, you would not be surprised. It is the end times, and men will be lovers of money and their own crap. But it's interesting that they never ever do that against the Muslim faith. They always attack the Christians, not the Muslims. Why is that? Because they know how the Muslim guys are going to react if that is done to them. They will burn Paris down. They will burn London and Sydney down. They just don't do it. Oh, they attack them with bombs, they murder them, they kill them all the time, but not in that way. They won't do it because they get away with it with the Christians. They hate you. Basically, they hate you. If you believe in the Bible and you're like me, don't need to be a Seventh-day Adventist, but it would be good if you are. It's a true faith. I didn't just become one, let me tell you. It took me 5 years for them to convince me. I really went out of my way to prove them wrong, as so many others did. And I failed, because everything they did was from the Bible. You say any objection, they just quote the Bible to you. End of story. And then you start seeing how these things fit together. And guess what? Then you have to understand there's only one church left. The only one church left who is actually following the Bible. It's scary, because all of them say they do. But then again, go and listen to what they have to say and what they do. All you see basically is the mark of a beast in the forehead as well as in the right hand. But I explained those things. I'm not here to convert you to Seventh-day Adventism, I'm not. But I will say this to you, if you really want answers, forget about your little priest there in your church or your pastor. Forget about him. Doesn't know what he's talking about. If he goes to church on a Sunday, doesn't know what he's doing. I have to pray for him. Then rather go to a Seventh-day church or do some research, as I told you. Walter Wife, go and research that. Go and look at what's up, Prof. Comes out every week. Shows you exactly how this is out playing, how it's playing out. Fantastic. It's a fantastic intelligence. I mean, you people are mostly military people listening to me. Why would you not want the intelligence to see what's happening in the world? I don't get it, guys. You have to. You cannot sit on the fence, and once you know there's something wrong, you better start investigating. Your eternal life is at stake here. But anyway, I'm going on and on in this book about many, many different things. It is very much in the way which I described it to you now. So I have to end it here. I could have gone on many, many more hours. I hope you find it interesting. It is available on Amazon, Codename Wednesday 7. It is available on Kindle, hardcover, softcover, audio. Great book, 554 pages. Lots of other things happen in the book as well, but I touched the highlights here. I hope you enjoy it, and I hope it doesn't turn you away from the books. I know it's hard-hitting. A lot of these things which I say will shock the hell out of people. I don't do that because I want to shock the hell out of you, but that's the truth. That is biblical. I can back whatever I say with the Bible, and I do. In every single book, I do that. So, some people say to me, it's missionary work what I do with the GMJ series. Some say it's missionary work what I do with the Legacy Conversations. Let me say to you, I don't feel called to do that. I never did. But I will stand by the truth as I see it. And it was revealed to me. I'll stand by it. As Martin Luther said, I can do no other. So help me God. And God did help me through this. These books were not just written. A book like Oath of Evil, which is 651 pages, was written in 5 days. Yeah, 5 days. The editing took a bit longer. The research took many years, but it was written in 5 days. This one took a bit longer. It was 2 weeks. Okay, we'll speak again. God bless. Bye-bye. See you.